Okay, so chapter 17. Today we are going to start in the item of the good spiritists. But as I did last week, and I think it's important that we go back and reflect on what is really the purpose, what I personally believe is the intention of Kardec in placing this chapter here to us. Because when you read it, we almost feel like, oh man, this is utopic, it's impossible. They want us to be gods, they want to be as good as Christ was, and that's not really the intention of Kardec. It doesn't mean to make us depressed and
You're right.
and lose the willpower to move on by reading those kind of things. On the opposite, it's to stimulate us to treat to be used as a syllabus, as a is a good tool for us to direct our intentions, our willpower to move in that direction. So let's start with the word again, perfect again. Reminded that the teachings of Christ was made mostly in an Aramaic language and sometimes in Hebrew. And what we receive today from Christ is that was being translated to the Greek, and from the Greek is being translated for each language throughout the globe today, Portuguese, English, French. So there is, to begin with, the problem with the translation of the translation of the translation, and more important, of a translation of two languages that had a very small lexicon, very small number of words in that language, which a word would have many different meanings. And when they were talking among themselves in the context, they would have no problem. But when you have to translate and make the translation of the translation, you may get a little bit lost in its true original meaning. So it's always good to go back and see what really was meant at that time. And through my readings on this topic, I read that the word perfect here is not to be understood in the absolute perfection as we see it in our common language, in our dictionaries, if you go to, but to be understood as to understand our purpose or objective and to completely, perfectly fulfill it. And the example that I used last week, I'm going to repeat here. Let's say a perfect piano is one that produces perfect notes. Well, properly tuned piano made with the best possible wood, with the best possible material, will produce the perfect note. A perfect pianist is the one who would be able to extract the perfect notes from the perfect piano, right? You could not expect the perfect pianist to extract perfect notes, let's say, from a flute, because it's not a perfect flautist, right? It's a perfect pianist. So a perfect knife will make the perfect cut, but it's not going to be used to eat soup. To eat a soup, you need a perfect spoon. And that's the meaning of perfection. Be perfect in what your purpose is or are. Like perfect is God. And then why God? Why bring us to the level of God? And the question I placed last week, I placed today again, is what else could Jesus use? What was his alternative beyond the use God? The only thing that when, at least we spirits could imagine himself. I could imagine if Jesus said at that time, looking at all of us there, be perfect as I am. The absolute simple symbol of humility says, be perfect as I am. It does not sound right. It does not sound good. In our ignorance, we would not take that very well. Perhaps not even today, most of us would not. Today we understand what you'd mean, but most of us would not. But of course, it doesn't mean to be perfect as the absolute perfection, because not even the Christs are perfect as God is perfect. There is always a gap. Will you never be God's? Not even when you reach the absolutely spiritual perfection that awaits us. Will you reach the level of God? It's one and only, and it's absolute, and will you never be that, right? So it's not telling us to become gods, because that would be contradict the natural laws. And then we have to think, so what is it that is meant? And I'll go back to what we said last week, as again, as we have in the Spirit's book, question 573, which I'm going to read so we know what he's talking about. When Kardec asked the spirits, what is the mission? You could translate mission here to the purpose, to the objective of the incarnate spirits, reminding that Jesus is speaking to us incarnated spirits, right? And the answer is educating others incarnate, helping their advancement, and improving their institutions through direct material means. So it's all about theirs, doing to others. And if you go back to what Kardec introduces the chapter, sorry, we read here, can we read first, right? Item 1?
Yes. Love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who persecute and slander you. For if you love only those who love you, what reward will you have? Do not the publicans do the same? If you greet only your brothers, what are you doing that is more than what others do? Do not the pagans also do the same? Therefore, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect.
So isn't that, this introductory statement of Christ, pretty much the answer of the spirits? What is our mission over here? Is to project our actions, our intentions, our desires to the betterment of others. And we also go back to the question 895 that we can also read here. That is in the Spirit's book also, in the chapter that deals with the moral perfections. Right. And Kardec asked the spirits, besides the obvious faults and vices, what is the most characteristic sign of imperfection? So what is the most clear sign of our imperfection? And the spirits answer with one word, period, selfishness. And then, of course, they go on and explain what they mean by that. So the answer is selfishness, period. Moral qualities are too often like gilding on copper that cannot withstand the acid test. Some individuals may possess good qualities that help them to appear to be virtuous, but those qualities, despite proving that they have made a certain amount of progress, may not be capable of standing trial. The slightest disturbance of their narcissism is enough to reveal their true nature. Absolute impartiality is so rare on earth that when they do encounter it, you may very well view as a phenomenon. So if in one side our mission is to serve others, our most clear sign of our imperfections, our selfishness. And the Spirit goes on and say that true lack of imperfection or selfishness is rather rare. We don't see that often here yet. And Kardec uses this chapter to be exactly this guideline, this tool for us to move from this characteristic selfishness that is still persisted within us. And the Spirit goes and say, yeah, yes, you guys doing work and towards eliminating that, doing the best. But when you're extremely challenged to show that you do not lack, that do not have the selfishness anymore, we see that you still have it. And the perfection would be to act, to be able to express with complete fidelity the God within us. So that's why it's be perfect as our Father who is in heaven, is to be able to completely, with absolute fidelity, express the God that is within us, the divine laws imprinted in our conscience, to live in accordance with the divine laws imprinted in our conscience. That would be perfection of the Spirit, at least of the Spirit incarnating in the planet Earth. And we're going to limit ourselves to that because we can not go beyond that. This is enough to us. That's enough of a syllabus for us to work with. Not let us not try to expand this. What about more elevated words? What about the love of the Christ? Well, when you get there, we will discuss that. I think I have enough in our plate to deal with right now. And I'm saying this because we always try to go one step ahead, to look beyond us, as if you almost wants to. It's easy to talk about others than to talk about ourselves, right? But that's limited to us. Let's accept the challenge of talking about ourselves here. So to the meaning of to be perfect as God our Father who is in heaven is exactly that, to be able to express the goodness of God within us. And the way that we do that is to serve others, is to educate others, is to provide to others. Understand that all that comes back to us in a natural law of action and reaction. Okay, comments, questions? So then we can go back to good spiritists.
Okay, so we begin. Good Spiritist. Number 4. Spiritism, when well understood, but especially when well felt, inevitably leads to the results listed above, which characterize the true Spiritist as well as the true Christian, for they are one and the same. Spiritism does not create a new morality. It only makes it easier for people to understand and practice the morality of Christ by providing an unshakable and enlightened faith to those who doubt or waver. Nonetheless, many of those who believe in spirit manifestations understand neither their consequences nor their moral implications. Or if they do understand them, they do not apply them to themselves. To what may this be attributed? To a lack of precision in the doctrine? No, because the doctrine
I'm sorry. Contains no allegories.
right, because the doctrine contains no allegories or symbols that could give way to erroneous interpretations. Clarity is its essence, and that is what makes it powerful, for it goes directly to one's intelligence. It contains nothing mysterious, and its adherents do not possess any secret that is hidden from ordinary people. Thus, is an exceptional intelligence needed to understand it? No, since one sees individuals with notable capacities who do not comprehend it, while average minds, even young people who have barely left adolescence, understand it in its most delicate nuances with admirable precision. This derives from the fact that the somewhat material aspect of Spiritist science requires only eyes that can observe, whereas the essential aspect requires a certain degree of sensibility, which one might call maturity of the moral sense, regardless of age and level of education, because it is particularly inherited to the development of the incarnate spirit. In some, the material ties are still too tenacious to allow the spirit to detach itself from the things of the world, because the fog that envelopes them obscures their vision of the infinite. Consequently, they do not easily break with their tastes or their habits, as they do not understand anything better than what they have. The belief in spirits is for them a simple fact, but it, okay,
Does nothing
but
or
it does
very little
not,
to change.
right, but it does nothing or very little to change their instinctive tendencies. In other words, they see only a rare array of light, insufficient to guide them and endow them with a powerful aspiration capable of overcoming their inclinations. These persons are much more interested in the phenomena than the morality, which seems banal and monotonous. They insensely demand that spirits introduce them to new mysteries without asking if they're worthy of grasping the secrets of the Creator. These individuals are imperfect spiritists, some remaining stationary or distancing themselves from their brothers and sisters in the faith, recoiling at the obligation of reforming themselves, or otherwise reserving their sympathies for those who share their weaknesses or prejudices. Nevertheless, acceptance of the principle of the doctrine is a first step that will make the second easier in the future existence. Those who may rightfully be regarded as true and sincere spiritists are at a higher degree of moral advancement. Their spirit dominates matter more completely, thus giving them a clearer perception of the future. The principles of the doctrine make fibers vibrate within them that remain dormant in the former. In short, their heartstrings are touched. Therefore, their faith is unshakable. Some are like the musician who is moved by certain chords, when others hear only the sounds. True spiritists are recognized by their moral transformation and the efforts they make to overcome their evil inclinations, while the former are content with their limited horizon. The latter understand that there is something better. They make the effort to free themselves, and they always reach their goal if they maintain a firm will.
So,
Continue?
no, thanks.
Okay, okay.
So the good spirit isn't the spirit spent 3/4 of this passage is telling of the not so good spiritists. And that's about 1/4 talking about the good spiritists. And one must imagine why they're doing that. And at least I do think about those things when I read. And I think because the spirit trying to bring the law of average into action. So the average, so the most common yet at this point amongst us, that we are moving towards to become this so good spiritist. Hopefully, we are marching at a fast speed towards that. But it's almost natural to expect that we are not there yet. I really like the way that the spirits of Kardec, it starts by saying that the Spiritism, when well understood, but especially when felt, because then we go beyond the intelligence of the intellect, the brain, and you bring to the intelligence of the heart. And the combination of the two of those is what will produce the actions, will move us forward. Um, you can use the example that, as Joana de Anjou tells us today, that our problem today is not of knowing, is of doing, which means that we do understand things pretty well, but it's lacking. What is it lacking to propel us to do it? Well, I know, but I don't do it. It's because that knowing is still limited to the intellect. It needs to come into the moral, with the intelligence of the heart. And when that happens, to act becomes almost impossible not to, because it will propel us forward, moving forward in the direction of charity when it reaches the intelligence of the heart, the moral intelligence, then we will act. So not only understand, no, the Spiritism when well understood, but especially when felt, inevitably leads to the result listed above. And the listed above, if you recall the passage I read last time, is the moral person, right? Is that list of attributes that a moral person have, and the end it says, and that's not all, but that's enough to start. And we can always go back and read it again because it's extremely important. We should read that often, as again as a guideline, as a syllabus for us. But you cannot go back there every time there is still this chapter. And Spiritism did not invent anything. Spiritism is not a doctrine that brings any new moral law to us. Spiritism facilitates the understanding. It stimulates the transformation of that intellectual intelligence to moral intelligence, so the feeling, so we can feel it, and that will inevitably propel us to act. And Spiritism and Christianity is one of the same. Spiritism does nothing more than brings down the teachings of Christ in a simple form, without the parables, without the metaphors, by being very objective on its teachings. And as the promised consoler, it further explain what Jesus could not explain at that time, but explain it without rituals, explain it without parables, and explains in a very direct form, because now we are ready for it, or most of us are ready for it. And I think it's very important when it says over here, is an exceptional intelligence needed to understand it? It means spiritism? And the answer is no. And we see that because it does eliminate the metaphors, because it eliminates the parables or further explain the parables, it is easily digestible to most minds. One just have to be free to receive it, and free from our prejudices, free from the built-in cultural things that have been printed in our mind for so long, that makes us hard to open ourselves to receive this freely and reason it without any prejudices. But when we are, it's not such a hard thing to understand. It is practical. And it says people who have barely left adolescence understand it well in its most delicate nuances with admirable precision. And this is important. This derives from the fact that somewhat mature aspects of the Spiritism science requires only eyes that can observe, whereas the essential aspect requires a certain degree of sensibility, which one might call maturity of the moral sense, regardless of age and level of education, because it is particularly inherent to the development of the incarnate spirit. Um, well, I don't know if recently, but a few years back, there was a big discussion in the Spiritism in Brazil, and the doctrine was being accused of being elitist. If you do now, it was done. When they do the census in Brazil in the 80s, and they saw that Spiritism is still a majority, right? It's still like 2% of the population, I believe. Not sure the numbers, but it was seen that although me being the least, being so small, is the one with the greatest number of individuals with third degree education, no college graduates, and was one with a high level of income. So Spiritism has been accused of being limited to the very smart and the very rich, which is absolutely not true. It is true, and the numbers show that the great majority of Spiritism in Brazil have completed college, the great number of it. There's a greater number of it that have not as well. And not every Spiritism is making a lot of money. But if you are college graduated, especially in a third world country, your income will be somewhat above average, right? And but that opens the question that perhaps Spiritism being a reasonable doctrine that asks us to use our brain, to individuals who are free-minded will navigate towards Spiritism, are the ones who are seeking for answers and not limiting themselves to partial answers, or not being comfortable or limited by do not question, just accept what it is. Individuals with this free mind like that are the most likely to do well, to go on education, everything else. And that's exactly what the Spirit is saying over here, that there is no elitism. It's not required a brilliant mind. It's not required a competitive mind. It's not require a desire to be above anything. Once you have this maturity of the moral sense, then you break the chains that holds you tied to taboos, to everything else, and allows you to seek, to look for answers, to be open to put it down prejudices and allow reason to prevail over it. And when we're able to do that, Spiritism will make completely sense. That will facilitate us to imprint the intellectual intelligence into the heart, transform it in moral intelligence, and will propel us forward to act. So there is no elitism. It's not reserved for any group of the population. Its teachings is absolutely universal, and it's achievable to anyone, even the ones with less book smartness, with less advancement in education as we see here with having or not a degree. There's nothing to do with that, but it has mostly to do with the maturity of the moral sense, regardless of the age and the level of education. I think this is very important because we will see, and I had experience to see that, individuals with not a great level of school bench education. Chico Xavier is one perfect example. And he had maybe 2 or 3 years of school education only, right? But with a tremendous amount of understanding of the doctrine, a complete understanding of the doctrine. And I see that a lot in Brazil, especially in Brazil, where education was very difficult at certain time, and even the time that I was living there. But it is for everyone. So you see that the incomplete or us in the moving towards of become a good spiritist, one of the things that you're going to see is the fascination by the phenomena, which is completely understandable. All of us that have curiosity to understand how is this thing of the dead come and talking to us? How is the thing that one person living can see the one that is dead? How is this thing that one person living here in this physical world can receive the thoughts and write it down of someone who is living the physical world? How does it happen? This curiosity, being just a plain curiosity, and you bring that a step above and bring it to a scientific curiosity. I want to fully understand this phenomena, which is good. But if we limit ourselves to that, we kind of miss the target. We miss the point. Because all those phenomena that, of course, has a scientific application and can be studied at a scientific level, is not to be limited to that material part of it. All this revelation that comes to us, the purpose, the objective is to upgrade us morally. So the incomplete spiritism stops right there. We miss the target. And the good spiritist, on the other hand, is the one who gets that first aspect of it, who becomes attracted by it because of the phenomenon, but get the target. The phenomenon is great, but we need to take it above. We have to utilize that. And to utilize that is to use this to upgrade us morally. And then we go back to 573, our mission, to serve others, to educate others, to be good to others, and go back to Jesus Christ, to love our enemies, to do good to those who are not like us, do not think like us, who persecute us, to go above the average, because as Christ says, to love those who love us, to do good to those who do good to us, to break bread with those who think like us, as it says, even the publicans do. And Jesus asks us to go a step above, to be perfect as God is perfect. That would be the mission, that would be that what will define the good spiritist. And more important is that here the spirits of Kardec bring the great, to me, consolation or optimism to us, that the true spiritists are recognized by the moral transformation and the effort they make to overcome the evil inclinations. So this to me is the most important sentence. If you disregard everything, throw this book away and never read it again, but memorize this sentence and live by this sentence the rest of our lives, I think we'll be fine. True spiritists are recognized by their moral transformation and the efforts they make to overcome their evil inclinations. So we can throw everything away and just take this. Spiritism was presented to us, to the phenomena, to the mediumship. The Spiritism is able to explain the phenomena scientifically, bringing reasons, bringing everything in the scientific and the philosophical aspect of the doctrine. But all of this has one single purpose: to better us morally, to upgrade us morally. So the good spiritist is one who put effort on better oneself morally. It's not the one who does not have evil inclination. It's not the one who gets upset, who gets mad, who does not get mad, who does not get angry, who does not have prejudices, but they're the ones who make the effort to overcome those evil inclinations. Do we get upset? Yeah, that makes me a bad spiritist? No. It made me a bad spiritist if I allow myself to act in my madness. If I do not put an effort to overcome those problems, those vices. The one who, at night when I go to night, so could I have done a little bit better today? Did I drop the ball? Yeah, how many times? 15 times. My goal is tomorrow, I want to drop the ball 14 times. And you do that consistently. Again, I mean, if you want to get big biceps, you're not going to do it by going to the gym one day, lift weight for 15 minutes, and now have big biceps. You're going to have to do that every single day. And even worse than that, you're going to have to increase the weight, because otherwise the muscle gets conditioned and doesn't break fibers anymore. You're going to have to increase the weight, you're going to have to increase the repetitions and all those things that they do. Something with increasing our muscle of our charity. We're going to have to do it, increasing it slowly, but consistently. And that makes a true spiritist. Not free of evil inclinations, but putting effort to overcome them. So again, I think if just throw everything away, if just memorize this sentence and live through this, I think we'll be in pretty good shape. All right. Comments, questions? Disagree? Okay, Wayne. I mute you, Wayne. Sorry. You're still mute.
Okay.
Okay.
This section, Good Spirits, is a great summary of introduction to Spiritism. I can see it being used to explain what Spiritism is about, and of course, if we can all remember that we're all just at least, well, I guess on all the worlds, we're all making efforts to be better, like we were saying with that last paragraph there. If we make the effort, that's what it's about. I guess, I can say we're making the effort until, but that until is so far out there that it's pretty much all the time, as long as we make the effort.
That's right. And at least philosophically, that until is infinite, right?
Yeah.
Because when you reach that until, there is another until ahead of you. And when you reach that one, there is another one ahead. So that is pretty much infinite. And again, if the goal of the Spiritists is to help us to understand the intellectual level, to put that into the moral level, the feeling, to feel it, the intelligence of the heart, and to propel us to act, it's because we need it. We are here because we need that, and we understand our need. We are humbled enough to say, I need this too. Are there individuals living this planet today who are above this already, who already understand, already feel it, and is already acting? It's possible. They don't need it. But we students in this planet, in this school, we humbleness accept this challenge. And we use this as a wonderful tool to help us. Because that is the purpose of the doctrine, to be used as a tool to help us to understand, feel, act. Maybe are those there who don't need it, good for them. I really, one of the things that I admire the most, and perhaps even envy at some level in my ignorance, are individuals who are almost everything that you read in the moral person over here, and have no, at least do not express any belief, any religiosity, any concerns at all with spirituality. And I managed to fulfill most of those characteristics of the moral persons that are here. There are some out there. It's rare, but there are some out there. I really admire those individuals. All right, any more comments? That's the parable of the sower now.
Okay. Parable of the sower. Number 5. On that same day, Jesus, having left the house, sat down close to the sea, and a large crowd of people gathered around him. Therefore, he climbed into a boat and sat down, while the people remained on the shore. He then told them many things in parables, speaking to them in this way. A sower went out to sow, and as he was sowing, some of the seed fell by the wayside, and the birds of the sky came and ate them. Other seed fell upon stony places where there was not much earth. They soon sprouted because the soil was not very deep. But when the sun came up, it scorched them. And since they had no roots, they withered. Still other seed fell among thorns. And when they began to grow, the thorns still choked them. The thorns choked them. Finally, some seed fell on good ground and produced a crop, some rendering 100 to 1, others 60, and others 30. He who has ears, let him hear. Hear therefore the parable of the sower. Whoever hears the word of the kingdom but does not heed it, the evil spirit comes and takes it away, what had been sown in his heart. This is the one who received the seed by the wayside. He who received the seed among the stones is the one who hears the word and receives it joyously as soon as he hears it. But he has no roots in himself, and it lasts only a while. And when he is overcome by obstacles and persecutions on account of the word, he soon regards it as an object of offense and ruin. He who receives the seed among the thorns is the one who hears the word, but then the cares of the times and illusions of riches choke the word within him, rendering it unfruitful. But he who receives the seed on good soil is the one who hears the word, who heeds it, and who produces a crop, rendering 100 or 60 or 30 to 1. Number 6, the parable of the sower represents perfectly the nuances that exist in the ways one profits from the teachings of the gospel. How many people they are, in fact, for whom the gospel teachings are only a dead letter which, like the seed that has fallen on the stony soil, produces no crop. This parable finds a no less correct application in the different categories of spiritists. Is it not a symbol of those who are interested only in the physical phenomenon, but derive nothing of consequence from them because they see them as nothing more than an object of curiosity? Of those who seek nothing but the wonder in spirit communications, who are interested in them only to the extent that they satisfy their imagination, but who, after having received them, are as cold and indifferent as they were in the first place. Of those who find the counsels to be very good and admirable, yet apply them only to others and not to themselves. And of those, finally, for whom the teachings are like the seed that falls on good soil and yields a crop.
Thanks.
Okay.
I couldn't help myself, but kind of when I read this introduction from what is it, of Matthew over here, and just saying like, an average day back then, that Jesus just left the house early in the morning and walk into the sea and perhaps gonna go out in the water with the fishermen or whatever, gets into a boat, and just imagine myself being over there and just being one of those ignorant but already trying to understand and follow this guy. And how much if I was there, probably not, how much I'm still that same person yet, right? Still trying to understand, still trying to follow this guy that at least now recognize as the one that we should follow. And I just imagine, how nice it would be, just outside of all this technology that we have today, that people are present at a real time, thousands of miles away. Somebody could be talking to us right now from New Zealand, Thailand, and we have, a conversation. It's so wonderful, but at the same time, how wonderful would it be to be able to just walk in there next to Jesus and just hear him talking to us from a boat, and we're sitting right there at the sand at the beach. It would be such a wonderful thing to experience. So I try to put myself as being over there with barefoot on the sand, just listening to Jesus talking to us in an early morning. What a wonderful thing that would probably be. But then again, it's just me thinking, very bucolic sense over here. But the important thing is those who were there listening to him at least have understood that this is the guy for us to follow his recommendations, guidelines, and we are those guys today. Even if we're not able to do 100%, you're able to do 2-3%, it's moving in that direction already. And the part about sower is it's very interesting. The seeds is the same. As if the farmer goes to a store and buy a sack of seeds of whatever you think, wheat, corn, rice, and they are all the same. They're all from the same sack. They're from the same crop. popular for the same store that you buy it. And not all of them will produce the same thing, right? It depends where it falls, depends where it is placed, and depends how we take care of it. If you get the best of the seeds and you throw on pure stone, you're gonna get nothing from it. If you get the same sand and throw where the soil is very shallow, does not give room to spread its root, it will germinate quickly because it's close to the surface, and then we receive a good amount of sunlight, and we receive a good amount of water also, but cannot produce root. And when the sun gets hard, it's going to just burn everything down. And those who may fall in somewhat good soil, but we do not take care of that soil well, and allow the pests, the vegetation to grow around it, it may suffocate it. But those who call to fall in good soil and we take care of it, it should grow and be very productive. But the seeds are all the same. The teachers are all the same.
Mhm.
That comes to the Jesus suggestion to us, pray and be vigilant. Hear the seeds. Be vigilant. Make your heart a good soil that allows roots to grow deep and profound. And be vigilant that we take care of those growing plants, take away all the pests or the suffocating vegetation around it. And what is that? We are bombarded by suggestions that lead us to move almost contrary to the teachings of Christ. You know, think of yourself first. It's you first, you second, you third, and if you have time, maybe think of someone else. God has much power, and by power, monetary power, whatever kind of power, you know, influence power, what kind of power you have. Gather it all for yourself and use it all for yourself. It seems like there is a movement leading us to follow those directions. Those are the, what is the word that you use again? The thorns and stuff. All the thorns that, you know, you need to be careful to not let it grow in our heart, because when they do, they will suffocate the good plant. When it starts to happen, have the decisive energy to clean up that area, remove all that thorns around it. It's very hard to take control of it when it's already grown. Cut it from the beginning, from the very beginning. When you see that it starts, you take it off. Because again, the seeds is always the same. But the soil is not always the same. Jesus do not select, I'm going to give you this to you. He gives equally to everyone. Each one of us will be able to gather a percentage of it. But whatever that percentage that we get, let's utilize it 100%. Because it's then that it said, those who much received, more will be given. You've utilized that, if you multiply that, then you received more. The one who received 5 multiplied, they receive more. The one who received only 2 and buried end up with nothing. It allowed the thorn, in that case, the parable fear, that big thorn, to kill that plant that was growing over there. Be vigilant. Pray and be vigilant. Cut those thorns as soon as we see they are coming out. And then you'll be able to get more and more and more. If you are only able to understand now 1%, but you apply that 1% at 100% of our abilities, we multiply it. It will become 2%, and then it become 4%, and then it become 8%, and 16, 32, 64, and so forth and so on. That would make the perfect Spiritist, because the one who seeks to understand and to apply. And to apply is to not act in still evil tendencies. And there is this law in nature: if you don't use it, you lose it. If I don't use my selfishness over and over again, I will lose it. If I don't use my prejudice towards, I don't know, race, age, sexual orientation, whatever prejudice that we have, and we all have some, I do have them, but I do not act on them. I suppress them with the intelligence of my heart. Then I will lose that prejudice. And that's how we perfect ourselves. How we purify ourselves. And requires tremendous amount of vigilance. Comments, questions?
Elma?
Yep.
I always like this, the sower's tell, and in that, for you internally, to make your soul, the soil of your soul, fertile, to give it the nourishment, to give it the water, to give it what it needs to allow this seed to grow. Sometimes I hear this used to when some talk about spreading the doctrine, that I don't want to talk to this group of people because they are not receptive to it. And they make it similar. They make an analogy of them being the rocks, that I can throw my good words there, to sow my seeds, but nothing's going to grow. And on a couple occasions, I brought out pictures showing against all odds, showing a beautiful tree. Let's say you've probably seen pictures in the coast of California on the rocks, a beautiful tree growing out of the rocks where one seed made it. So made it successful. So as not to, when spreading the word, not to judge too harshly the soil of other people. Keep spreading the seed and see where it grows. I don't know if I made myself clear enough. But.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Just like we said here, the seeds is not reserved for the good soils only. You see, in the parable itself, it says here, the farmer, the seeds fall where it falls. it's a wrong idea that we should not go where we believe that there is only rocks. No, we go over there. We don't know what is in that rock. We do not know what's in people's heart. I have an uncle who always to tell me, someone's heart is land that no one can touch. We don't know. Among us, what we believe it's only rock, superficially may not be. It's very different what lives in people's hearts and what comes off of people's mouth. So I agree 100%. Go ahead and spread the seeds and let each one take as much as they can. Again, some may take only 1%, but they will utilize that 1% and multiply that 1% to 2% and then into 4%. You give what you give. Our position, let's say, is a teacher in a classroom of 30 kids. She's gonna teach for all the 30 kids. Some will be more open, some will apply, some will be careless. She's not gonna say, oh, I'm gonna teach only for this group because they seem interested. I forget about those 5 over there who doesn't care. No, you teach to everyone equally. And let each one cultivate that seed at their own ability or interest. So I agree 100%. And if there is any group saying don't do this, don't do that, the doctrine does not teach that. The doctrine, on the contrary, teaches go ahead and do it. And just do not have expectations. Do not think that you are in a position to see the expectations, because we don't know where we come from. Maybe the best that I can get today is 1%, and the best that I can do today is apply 50% of what I got. And that 1% is the best that I can do, and 50% is the best that I can do, and I did my best. Not enough? For whom? Who's to say? And the teachings of Christ is consistent. Go and teach. Knock at the doors. If it's not open, move on. Check the sands of your sandals and move on. So if there's anyone suggesting that we should not teach this, not talk to that people, that's not in accordance with the doctrine. Could you imagine if Christ would say that? I'm not going to teach these people because they're not going to listen to me. Still be willing to come. Okay, we have time to do the duty.
We do 6, Elmo?
We did 6.
Okay. Okay, I'm so involved in listening to a beautiful explanation. Okay, duty, 7, number 7. Duty is an individual's moral obligation, first toward him or herself and toward others immediately thereafter. Duty is the law of life. It is found in the smallest details as well as in the most elevated acts. I want to speak here only about moral duty and not the type imposed by the professions. In the order of sentiments, duty is very difficult to fulfill because it is contrary to the seductions of self-interest and the heart. His victories have no witnesses and his failures undergo no repression. People's inner duty is left to their free will. The sting of conscience, that guardian of inner rectitude, warns and upholds them, but it is held back, often powerless, before the sophistry of passion. When faithfully obeyed, the duty of the heart uplifts people. But how is such a duty determined? Where does it begin? Where does it end? Duty begins precisely at the point in which you threaten your neighbor's happiness or peace of mind. It ends at the limit you would not want to see surpassed regarding yourselves. God created all humans equal regarding pain, small or great, ignorant or educated. They all suffer for the same reasons, so that each may judiciously determine the evil he or she might do. The same criterion, however, does not exist regarding the good, which is infinitely more varied in its expressions. Equality in the face of pain is a sublime provision by God, who wishes that all his children, taught by common experience, would not commit evil, alleging ignorance of its effects. Duty is the practical summary of all moral speculation. It is the courage of the soul who confronts the distress of life's struggles. It is both strict and yielding, ready to adapt itself to diverse complications. It remains unbending before temptation. Persons who fulfill their duty love God more than they love other individuals, and they love others more than they love themselves. They are at the same time judge and slave in their own cause. Duty is the most beautiful law of reason and depends on it like a child depends on its mother. Humans should love duty, not because it preserves them against life's evils. Humankind cannot avoid those, but because it provides the soul with the strength it needs for its development. Duty grows and radiates under a more elevated form at each of the highest stages of humanity. Individuals' moral obligations toward God never ceases. They should reflect the virtues of the Eternal One who does not accept an imperfect sketch because he wants the beauty of his work to be resplendent before him. Lazarus.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think most of us never attribute the definitions of duty to what you just read here now, right? It seems to be quite different from in our common place, in our common lives, we see do what duty seems to be. So the duty of an individual's moral obligation first towards him or herself and towards others immediately thereafter. Duty is the law of life. We all follow something, right? We are all kind of followers, even the ones that are considered to be leaders, perhaps are following some leadership. Those leaders are following something. We follow ideologies, not necessarily individuals. We follow moral ethical precepts, religions, or anything else, but all of us follow something. And we bring that as our duty to follow those things, to follow those moral ethical precepts, to follow the gold standard in our professions. In our profession, we have those gold standards, right? The ones that you must follow, whatever profession it is. But we all follow something. And the duty here to me seems to follow the laws imprinted in our conscience. And the laws imprinted in our conscience is what it says over here. Duty begins precisely at the point in which you threaten your neighbor's happiness or peace of mind and needs and ends at the limits that we would not want to see surpassed regarding ourselves. Is the golden rule. Do to others what you'd like others to do to you in a certain circumstance. And it's not, do not do to others. It is do to others. It's proactive. It's not passive. The law is never passive. The law doesn't say, sit in a corner and stay quiet over there so you don't harm anyone. It's better than harm someone, but it's not good also. Because the law says, go and do to others what you'd like others to do to you. So that is, in one sense, our duty. That's what I meant to do. They remember question 573. What is the mission of the canon spirits? To educate others, to provide to others, to do good to others. In this way, in the law of action and reaction, all that comes back to you. Come back to us as a spirit, eternal spirit. Right? Again, we act not expecting a reward or return. We know that it will come by the laws of action and reaction. But it may not come for one entire reincarnation. We may have to sacrifice ourselves for an entire incarnation. It's to have a bad, sacrifice one day at school. But the reward will come later. In the Spirit's book also, when talking about rights, because it seems like you always put rights conflicting with duties, right? It's almost, if you want to oppose the authors, in which is also a misunderstanding, right? Because in reality, you have the right to fulfill all duties. And you have to understand that our rights is always limited by the rights of our neighbors. So I have the right to listen to my music. So does my neighbor. So I have the right to listen to my music as loud as it does not interfere with the right of my neighbor to listen to his music. So there is limitations of rights, but there is no limitations of duties. Because in reality, you have the right of exercising all duties. And my duty is to respect my neighbor, is to respect the right of my neighbor to listen to his music. There is no limit to it. But there is a limit to my right of listening to my music. How loud can I hear it? When I read this, I always like to bring the right together, because I always hear people say, I know my rights, and nobody going to step on my rights. I hear that so often. But do you know your duty? Are you aware that you have some duties as well? Are you aware that your duties, that your right is conditioned to the fulfilling of your duties? You have the right to listen to your music, yes. But if you overstep your right, it can take it away from you. Or you listen to music too loud, the neighbor's complaining, so now we're gonna take all your means of listening to music. You're not allowed to hear music anymore because you are overstepping your rights. But your duties you're never gonna be limited. Nobody can take away your duties. And once you fulfill your duties, then you'll be able to exercise your rights 100%, knowing that they are limited by the rights for the others. And you're never going to overstep your rights, just as long as you fulfill your duties, living in accordance with divine laws that resides in our conscience. doing to others what you'd like others to do to you in the same situation. I like to hear my music without being overpowered by my neighbor's music. And it's not asking too much. I fulfill my duty of respecting, my neighbor fulfill his duty of respecting, and we live in peace. And if each one of us did that, there would be no wars in this world, and there would be no poverty in this world, if each one of us just fulfilled our duties. Comments, questions? I'm not going into virtue now because virtue is, I'll spend a good more amount of time on that. Because then I'd like also to parallel with the opposite of it would be vices. It's going to be a little bit longer. There is no comments, no objections. We can go to a final prayer. Carol, can you do a final prayer for us, please?
Yes, sorry, my mute was stuck. Sorry about that. Certainly, thank you very much, Elmo, and everybody who has been with us today. Excellent, wonderful, wonderful lesson. Infinite Creator, all goodness and grace, we are grateful to be together today for the opportunity to share our studies of the gospel teachings. May our minds and hearts be in alignment with the Spiritist teachings to assist us to upgrade our moral aspects and qualities. May we serve and educate others through discernment and humility. May we do good to overcome our negative tendencies. We can practice each new day to develop faith and courage. We evolve by applying the golden rule and by practicing charity, which is love in action. We look more deeply into our unique spiritual duty, which is within our consciousness. It is a universal quality. We are grateful to our spiritual benefactors, the good spirits, the helpers, the teachers, the mentors, the guides, those who are with us today. We give great thanks for helping us to stay centered, to be welcoming an open heart within, and to put these teachings into practice through discernment each day. We are grateful for these blessings that will continue not only today, but throughout the week. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us. May we be of service. May we have a much more charitable attitude in our daily life. And may we be open to sharing as we are able to do so, to assist others, to help them, and to help ourselves understand much more effectively. And may we close today, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we go forth to family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers, for we are never alone. There is so much goodness to be received and to circulate. We give thanks again for all those who have been participating, and we humbly ask for the prayers to go out universally to all those who are in need of assistance and healing, those who are deeply suffering now. We bring forth and call forth a greater love. We close now and remind ourselves to be beacons of light